Hello, folks, and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing with me, Jonny McFarlane. Joining me today is Joshua Barry. Derek Clark is still on holiday, the lazy bam, but he'll be back tomorrow. Rest assured, the Ginger Ninja will be here with his update on events of the weekend. But today we've got Josh and myself. So, Josh, a 2-0 win over Hearts at Tynecastle. I've got to say, a spectacular game. If you're a neutral watching that, absolutely terrific entertainment. Great example and advert for what Scottish football is all about, because it was literally all action from the get-go. And what it started was Hearts pinning back Rangers before a 4-minute spell that started in the 9th minute. Rangers got the 2 goals. What was your overall take of the game? It was quite, I mean, I know you're probably going to be on now for the next 15 minutes because there was so much to talk about, but give me your overall take.
Yeah, I mean, well, that 4-minute spell in particular, after Joe Aribo put that goal away, and you looked at the kind of, not the ease that Rangers carved through Hearts, because as you say, Hearts started well and had plenty of chances through the game. But I guess the ruthlessness with which that game was put out of touch so early on was just quite breathtaking. And I was at the side of the pitch that both of those goals occurred. Both celebrations were different in their manner. Morelos was peak Morelos times 10, and Aribo was equally enthused, but a little bit more reserved. But I mean, I think that opening spell again showed exactly what Van Bronckhorst is trying to do. I thought the team selection was brave. I thought he went and won the game the correct way. He didn't get sucked into this narrative that he needed to go and battle first and then go and play. They didn't need to earn the right to go and play there. Rangers went and put that game out of Hearts' reach, and Hearts had chances, and obviously Rangers sat back. Hearts could well have scored 2 goals themselves in that game, but they didn't have that quality that Rangers had to score those 2 goals, and that was the difference in between it. So loads of impressive, I guess, elements of that game. And
Gosh, I can't believe you're taking apart the cliche that you have to go and win the right to win the game. I mean, I'm disappointed in you.
Well, but I mean,
it's one of my favourites.
Yeah, I know. I think if we're being honest, Johnny, you look at Tannadice earlier in the season. That's something that Gerrard spoke about a lot before games. And his midfield selection on that day with John Lundstrom and Glenn Kamara and Stephen Davis as a really kind of dogged midfield 3 would back up that claim. But if you go and put Ryan Kent and Fashion Sakala in the same team against anyone in the Scottish Premiership, you ask them to attack from wide areas, it's gonna, you're gonna have chances.
Yeah,
I thought Morelos will come on to him, but I thought he was excellent for me. Got the blend really well between aggression and like many things, kind of felt a little bit like, you'll remember his performance there in 2019 where he absolutely bullied Hearts defence, scored that ridiculous flicked goal from a free kick. So lots and lots of positives, but I guess there was almost an aloofness to the way Rangers went and won that game and then battled through to get the 3 points, and really impressive, really important victory. And now, Johnny, you've got 3 home games to come. That's not by any means 9 points, but it's a pretty good position to be in.
Now, listen, I don't know if you're aware of this, but on the Sky coverage of the game, obviously you were at Tynecastle, Ali McCoy showed his ability to be a clairvoyant, because about 5 minutes prior to the second goal, he pinpointed the fact that Connor Goldson was picking out Joe Aribo that runs through the middle of the centre backs. So you can imagine when the second goal went in, he was like, well, I told you so. Was it very, very obvious that this was a ploy at the game? Because obviously, and everyone will know this, watching the game is not the same as being at the game in terms of the view that you get, especially, to be fair, especially when you're in the press box, you've got a really good view right in the centre of the pitch. But was it something that you picked up on as well?
I think that, and I think also Kent's positioning, because if you look at, for both goals, those 2 factors are the way that Rangers break through, if you will. For the first, for Aribo's run, that gap is really facilitated by Kent's wider position. I put up a tweet at some point because I was sat right in front of Kent. And that wide position and Goldson constantly playing those balls stretches the pitch and makes the area that Hearts have to defend bigger, and Hearts then have decisions. Are we going to go and close Goldson down at source? Then he can maybe play through the midfield. Are we going to defend wide? Then it allows the gap for Aribo to exploit. Are we going to defend narrow or narrower, which then allows Kent to get the run on Moore in the first instance, which leads to the first goal? But I think that what Aribo has, and I was speaking actually to Craig Vickers about this yesterday, one of our contributors after the game. What Aribo has that no one really else in that first team offensively has is that ability to kill a ball like that first touch wise. I mean, we've seen Ryan Kent latch on to loads and loads of Goldson long balls, but not to that that same fluidity which Aribo did it with yesterday. There was a minute just before, I'm sure this is when McCoy cited it, where Aribo the pass was just overhit. But that touch and finish was just superb. And then it becomes a foot race. Again, if Hearts are going to be brave and leave space in behind the defence, then Rangers are going to exploit it. And I think that's been constant with Van Bronckhorst's early tenure at the club. Attack the spaces that teams are going to give up the wings, and we'll make it a lot more. We'll make them think about doing that a lot more. Attack teams in vulnerable areas, be direct at times. But yeah, Aribo's movement for that was fantastic, and he can do that every game, Jonny. And I think that's what we've seen again under the new management, and that will be the encouraging thing for supporters.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Aribo looks like a different player. He looks completely liberated. I wrote that after the last game, but I feel even against Hearts once again, he's kicking on.
Yeah.
And finally, I mean, I've criticised him and said he's not quite making the impact on games in Scotland that he would need to get a move to the Premier League if that's ultimately where he sees his future. But he's starting to do that under Giovanni van Bronckhorst. The influence and the tactical changes have made an enormous difference. Josh, we're still waiting on our stats bomb data. From any of the early data you've looked at, what's the kind of XG situation? Because Hearts did have a lot of chances. Let's not beat around the bush here. They have got their squad, for me, if they're not third, then there's a serious problem with Robbie Neilson, because in the final third, Giannelli, I know he was sent off, but he is a good player. Barry Mackay is still a Rolls Royce, and if he ever actually puts all the elements of his game together, will be a top player. Mackay-Stevens dangerous. Boyce is the best striker in the league outside the Old Firm.
Yeah.
I mean, attacking options-wise, they have got a lot going for them.
Yeah, and they've also got John Souttar pinging balls, the Goldson equivalent at the back, and there was a couple of balls he played early on which were problematic. I think Wyscout had Hearts slightly shading the XG. Obviously, you've got to caveat that with the fact that Rangers, for maybe 50 minutes of the remainder of the game after they went 2-0, were quite comfortable sitting in.
Yeah.
And again, that was a bit of a trade-off, because you could have brought on a Lundstrom earlier, and I'm sure that the defence would have looked a little bit more solid, because there was times where you noticed the fact that, okay, we're playing two wingers and two attacking midfielders here. This is a little bit easier to carve open than it would have been previously. But then the trade-off with that, Jonny, is that Rangers should have went and scored 2 goals. You've got Arfield, really should have had 2 goals, or one at least. The amount of times that Rangers must have counter-attacked, and even then there was at times they could have taken greater advantage of that. So one of these things where it's important to remember that Hearts had lots of chances, but it was quite a particular game by that point. And Rangers, I think, had the game won. There was a feeling at 2-0 where you thought, like, every time Rangers go forward here, they're picking Hearts off. But there seemed to be a little bit more of a conscious decision once it went 2-0 to preserve and choose their moments to attack, and they did sit off a lot. And it is well credit to Sakala in particular and Kent, who did a lot of defensive yards to pretty good degree. I think Kent actually, in terms of defensive awareness, has really impressed me on the Van Bronckhorst, knowing when to track runs, not leaving Borna it's really exploited. And again, that's a positive. And his little turn for the first goal, I mean, I turned to one, it was Chris Jacko sitting next to yesterday. I turned to Chris after the first goal and I said, Kent previously how many times would he have chopped back in on himself because he'd have been receiving the ball in congested areas? He wouldn't have had the momentum to run at a player. When you simplify his best assets, people won't be able to track him. Same with Sakala on the other flank. And Morelos' finish was really good. So, as I say, good afternoon all round. And although Hearts did have chances, Rangers really should have added a third as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Rangers did have some great chances and looked dangerous on the counter-attack. And listen, you're right to highlight Morelos, and we'll get to that because he did play really, really well. Quite a few people getting in touch about John Souttar, and you mentioned him there, so I thought I'd bring him up. CGM 55, Souttar did look like a player that we could use. And then we have got Colin Cameron saying, morning lads, great result, and we look to class above Hearts, real winning desire. what's your opinion on how Souttar played given our potential interest? Now, John Souttar's available on a free. I mean, you can start talking to him as of the 1st of January. Joshua, you've kind of said in a piece that you've done on the website where you scouted him that you felt like he would be a good option. There was nothing that we saw yesterday that would disabuse us of that. Was there? He was pretty good.
Yeah, I think the only thing is that there's that probably slight worry where I don't think his pace on the turn will be as good as Goldson's. There's ways we can obviously play around that. You think Man City have started to play Ruben Diaz on the right, so he's closer to Kyle Walker, and therefore the recovery pace on that side of the defence is better. So that's not a black mark, so to say. But I think, yeah, if you look at the way Goldson is also out of contract, and as it stands, he won't be at the club next season. He could well sign a new deal, but obviously as it stands, he hasn't. And if you look at Souttar's distribution, there's no one in that Rangers defence at the moment that can do that. Those balls that Goldson played yesterday are so important. They obviously lead to both goals, but it also is something that teams have to consider. It's just another really useful weapon that has only got better, and I guess culminated yesterday in that direct goal that Aribo scored. So if Goldson goes, I think you do need to try and replicate that to some degree. And Souttar's distribution is I don't know what his kind of stats are compared to Goldson's off the top of my head, but it's certainly very impressive. So, as you say, on a free, even just to improve that centre-back collective. Calvin Bassey was, again, excellent, had that late for Ray up the pitch, which Van Bronckhorst found very amusing. But I thought, again, against Boyce yesterday, Boyce, you're right, Boyce is an excellent player, and he's really good at kind of manipulating his body to earn those little yards. He can play with both feet. And Bassey was really tight to him. And there's a couple of moments as Hearts were chasing the game where Boyce received the ball and Bassey was just too tight on him so that Boyce couldn't turn. I thought he was really impressive again. But for me, signing Souttar is a bit of a no-brainer based on all those facts. The similarities to Goldson, his ability on the ball. He knows the league. He seems to have overcome his injury issues. And yeah, the only I guess not concern. Maybe a thing to note would be that pace. He's played a lot of his season in a 3. Obviously, he was in a 4 yesterday. That's something that I'm sure the management would be able to work out, though I don't think that would be a dictating factor in not signing him.
Yeah, CGM 55 again. Good question. Is Souttar a step up from Katic? Now, I had a wildly unpopular opinion last week that, judging by my Twitter, that I said, and I still stand by it, if Connor Goldson does go, there's a strong argument to say Rangers have already the players in place to replace him without going in the transfer market. They've got one of the most highly rated youngsters in British football, Leon King, coming through. They have Nikola Katic potentially able to come back. And Calvin Bassey is looking every day more like a centre-half. And I have to say, Josh, the question that you asked Giovanni van Bronckhorst, the answer he gave was way more emphatic than I was expecting when you said to him, how do you think he's been doing, and what do you think about him playing at centre back rather than left back? And he just said, "Well, I haven't seen him play at left back, and to be honest, he's got all the skills to be a top centre half." The tone of that answer was very much, "Well, yeah, he's not going to be playing left back." What?
Yeah.
Saying that.
Yeah.
What's your take?
I just think he's been excellent at centre back, and I think it's easy to forget how poor Rangers' defence has looked. Obviously, there's been changes that Van Bronckhorst has made that have helped that. But, Bassey hasn't slid into a really, smooth, well-oiled machine like last year, you could have argued he was coming into. And as just mentioned, with the getting tight to Boyce, the ability to step out of the defence. Him and Goldson's a really nice blend. In terms of would that work next season, I think people at times can underestimate how important Goldson is. In terms of that collective you mentioned, are they ready now? Katic, for me, I think is still too limited on. I mean, I've not watched a lot of him in Croatia, but and he was coming back from a long-term injury. Is he still going to be, or is he going to become good enough on the ball to be one of Rangers' 2 centre halves? That's always.
Let me jump in here and clarify what we're saying.
Right.
What we're saying would be that next season, it would be Bassey and Helander fighting it out for a left centre-back, with Bassey also as an auxiliary left-back should Borna Barisic get injured.
Yeah.
And then right centre back would be a fight between Balogun, Leon King, and Katic.
To me, I mean, I don't think it needs 3 signings, but I think it needs 1. I would feel a little unsettled if there was no Goldson replacement because I just think
A ball playing centre back.
Yeah, just in terms of like Goldson yesterday, he was a quarterback. Literally, he was
Yeah.
you know, and it becomes one of. If you look at the number of long passes he's playing under Van Bronckhorst, it's risen by about 6 or 7 per game. Van Bronckhorst obviously sees that as a really valuable weapon, especially when teams have to decide: are we going to defend wide? Are we going to defend centrally? Goldson can help exploit both. Also, I was, as I say, Johnny, quite close to the pitch at Tynecastle, and I thought James Tavernier in that second half defended his back post really, really well. And sometimes you, obviously with crowds being back, you can't really hear the players as much. But I thought his on-pitch leadership, the way he led from the front, took the ball in dangerous areas. There was one moment where he was screaming at McGregor to play the ball out faster, which was brave of him. He really impressed me as well yesterday. So. And has improved his game since Van Bronckhorst came in defensively. So just a word on that as well. Barisic let a couple of crosses in, but all in all, a pretty solid showing again. So, going back to basics has certainly helped. I would like another centre-back if Goldson is to go, that can be the kind of distributor from the back. But I understand what you're saying in terms of it's not what it was a few weeks ago when you've not got Bassey there and you think, Balogun's out of contract, Hellender's got injury issues, Goldson isn't playing well. It's a far healthier situation now.
Yeah, absolutely. And another area that's a far better situation is, of course, the front trio. You've already mentioned it, Joshua. Fashion Sakala, I thought when he was on it, he looked very, very, very good. I mean, he had his ups and downs throughout the game, which I think I think that's part of his play almost. But the pace that he has to eliminate players is going to be a real asset for Rangers. I don't think there's any doubt about that now. And he's certainly started to show it in a lot more consistent way since Giovanni van Bronckhorst came through the door. I know he got a hat trick under Steven Gerrard, but I just like him out there on the right flank. I think he looks a lot more comfortable there. On the left, Kent, as you say, isolated against 1 or 2 players rather than 5 or 6, and I think looks all the better for it. And then Alfredo Morelos working his backside off yesterday, getting involved in skirmishes with Hearts defenders, moaning at people, coming on at the end and cuddling Glenn Kamara and checking that he's okay. And he was back to the Alfredo Morelos of 2019, I thought. Yes, he's still got a bit to go in terms of his fitness, I think. He's not quite 100% there yet from a visual point of view for me. I don't have the stats in front of me, and that might be total nonsense. It's just based on what I'm seeing. But all the signs are really, really encouraging that Alfredo Morelos is getting back to a place where we all knew that he could go. And that is, being the top striker in Scotland, or certainly getting amongst the goals to an extent that he's in contention for that kind of role. He just hasn't been anywhere near that recently. So
you're right.
It's a big positive to see.
Yeah, and with Fashion Sakala, just quickly, I think you've also remember that yesterday he's really playing right midfield, having a lot of defensive work to do, receiving with his back to goal. As you say, in those moments where he does receive in high areas, he just looks so exciting and raw and offers something completely different. Kent, we've covered quite a lot, but it's just attacking spaces that I think are more natural to him. It's not that he can't play infield, but I think when he comes onto the ball and drives infield, often the results are far more profitable because of the momentum he's got behind him. Barisic's timed overlaps are a really useful asset there as well, because he's arriving instead of occupying. That makes it harder to mark and moves into these spaces quicker. And for me, Morelos yesterday, Johnny, it was not quite the perfect performance in terms of, it wasn't 100% polished, but if you look at when he tried to drag a Hearts defender into the midfield, that ball through to Arfield, obviously the goal, his physicality at the top end of the pitch, gives you everything you need. He's more of a focal point, and I think now and again you will still see him drop down a line, and sometimes that's useful. I don't think anyone has a problem with that as long as when he, for the majority of the game, he's acting as a focal point and he is in the box in that area that he scores his goal from, and he continues to look at it, and he looks just really invested. You're right, coming on after the game to hug Glenn Kamara.
Just on that, Josh, that's a great point that you just made there. I mean, I was watching Cristiano Ronaldo at the weekend, and there was a point in the game against Norwich where he dropped deep, dropped into what would be a natural number 10 position, and laid the ball off. But the difference is Ronaldo then sprints at 100 miles an hour to get to the number 9 position. And that's where Alfredo Morelos hasn't been doing what he hasn't been doing ultimately. He's not been doing the second part of it. But I think we're starting to see that.
Yeah, 100%. And it can be really useful, because if, like yesterday, a Halkett is going to go really, really tight with Morelos, as he did to great effect in the reverse tie at Ibrox, even though Morelos should have scored 3 that day, then it just gives the Hearts defence another issue. If you know that the player you're marking has the capacity to do that, has the capacity to switch play, it's harder to play against. But his occupation of just being in the box, even he almost connected with that first Kent header. Connected with the cross in the initial phase before Sakala laid the ball back into him. And that's the areas that you're right, he's not always been in. So again, great positive, clever management to get him back on side really quick and early. And I think everyone's delighted that he's playing to his potential.
Okay, we're going to call it a day there, Josh. We could talk about this for another 10 minutes, but time is pressing on and we need to call it a day. Okay, guys, if you've enjoyed what we've done today, of course, and you're watching on YouTube, please go and hit the subscribe button. That means you will get a notification whenever we go live on your phone or on your desktop, wherever you're watching us, just to let you know what's happening. We don't just come on in the morning. If there's big breaking news, we'll give you our reaction. And of course, we're coming on after games as well to give you the update from the stadiums that we are reporting from. So the other thing that we have is obviously the Rangers Review website, www.rangersreview.co.uk. You can subscribe there for $2.99 a month. It's not much at all when you sort of divide that out by the number of days in the month. We're giving you top-class Rangers coverage every single day, detailed tactical analysis from Joshua, opinion pieces, interviews, the whole shebang, everything you want from Rangers, it is there. So go on and subscribe. We will be back tomorrow with another daily update. As I say, Derek will be back, so we'll see what he's been up to in his wee break. Until then, thanks for watching.